Hello and welcome to the weekly Torah Perspective on Parshas Yithro. The Parsha this week is named after the man Yithro. Yithro was the political and religious leader from a nation called Midian. And now in the history of the Jewish nation, Midian has often been found to be an antagonist. Attacks by Midianites feature in the book of Judges, in Sefer Shoftim. So why is it then that this man Yithro deserves that the Torah portion that deals with the greatest event in Jewish history, Matan Torah, should be named after him? We read in the opening words of this week's Sedra, Vayishma Yithro, Kohen Midian, Chosin Moshe, es kol asher oso Elokim leMoshe uleYisrael amo, ki hotzi Hashem es Yisrael mimitzrayim. Yithro, the priest, the Kohen of Midian, the father-in-law of Moshe, heard all that God had done for Moshe and for his people Israel, that Hashem has brought Israel out of Egypt. On this, our sages remark, Ma shvua shoma uva, what is it that Yithro heard that made him decide to come? The splitting of the sea and the war against Amalek. Our sages, Chazal, emphasized that Yithro came as a reaction to his hearing of these great events. One may legitimately ask the question, was hearing about Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea, not enough for Yithro to motivate him to come? The Medrash tells us that Kriyas Yamsuf was experienced all over the world. Indeed, that all the waters in the entire world split just like the sea split. Now, we do not have to take this Medrash necessarily in a literal sense. After all, if indeed all the waters in the entire world would have split, would not the history books be full of such an enormous event? The Atlantic Ocean split, the Pacific Ocean split, Lake Titicaca in the highlands on the border of Peru and Bolivia split? Well, not necessarily. Mankind has the habit of airbrushing Jewish events from history to hide momentous events when it concerns the Jewish people. I'm old enough to remember the upheaval caused in 1967 by Israel's miraculous victory over 3 neighboring countries with armies and air forces many times stronger than theirs. The Six-Day War made a tremendous impression on the entire world. Even today, in many military academies all over the world, the tactical and strategic events that happened during this war are still being studied. And the military experts still do not quite understand how Israel's victory was possible. At the time, I was a teenager, not Jewish, not in contact with any member of the local Jewish community. I experienced how the non-Jewish world reacted to the Six-Day War. Everybody was baffled by the events. And clearly, the extraordinary nature of what had happened was clear to virtually anybody. However, it did not take very long before the Six-Day War had faded from memory and from the consciousness of the world. And then, of course, there is Holocaust denial. Once upon a time, it was the hobby horse of some extreme anti-Semites. But today, increasingly, it is becoming part of the dominant culture. Recently, some research has shown that 1/3 of Dutch youth believes that the Holocaust is a myth, and almost 50% believes that a much smaller number of people were murdered than in fact was the case. And give it a few more decades, and only Jews will know about one of the greatest crimes that has ever been committed in modern history. We should, however, not pat ourselves on the back. Who among us Jews knows about the Holodomor, the deliberate starving of Ukrainians by the Stalinist regime of the former Soviet Union? In that disaster, this man-made famine, the number of victims is estimated to be in excess of 3.5 million, and some estimates go even further. Now, do not misunderstand me. I do not equate murder on an industrial scale with a policy of artificial famine. But both are crimes of an unimaginable horror, and each has its own horrific characteristics. I'm merely illustrating the fact that people tend to remember matters that concern themselves and have less room in their mind for matters that they see as an SEP, somebody else's problem. So back to the Medrash. Maybe the Medrash then indeed tells us the historical fact that all the waters in the entire world split at the time of Kriyas Yam-Suf. However, it doesn't make really any real difference one way or the other. What is for sure is that Kriyas Yam-Suf made a huge impact on what was then for Yithro the entire world. So was this not enough reason for him to come and to say what he indeed said when he came to his son-in-law Moshe? Vayomer Yithro, Baruch Hashem, asher hitzil eschem miyad Mitzrayim umiyad Paro, asher hitzil es ha'om mitachas yad Mitzrayim. Why did Yithro only decide to come and join Moshe and his people when he had heard about the war that Amalek had waged against the Jews? Let us pay attention to the exact words of our sages. Ma shmua shoma uvo. What did he hear that made him come? Recall how the Torah in last week's Hedre introduced the story of Amalek's attack. Vayovo Amalek, vayilochem im Yisrael birefidim. And Amalek came. So what made Yithro come when he heard about this coming of Amalek? In a previous talk, actually last week, I have connected this coming of Amalek to the preceding story of the lack of water, Masa Umeribo, where the Jews wondered, Hayesh Hashem berkibenu im oyin. But that was looking at the events from the point of view of Yisrael. In their consciousness, the sudden attack by Amalek should have made them ask themselves, what in us is it that caused this? However, what was Amalek's own reason? What motivated Amalek? It is not too far-fetched to speculate that it was Kriyas Yam-Suf that drew Amalek's attention to the Hebrew slaves that had escaped from Egypt. In Amalek's world, the Jews were a disturbance of the natural order of things. Slaves shouldn't escape, and if they do, Pharaoh's army will catch up with them and put an end to the matter. Remember what I mentioned last time? Amalek is gematria Safek. The numerical value of the word Amalek is the same as the numerical value of the word Safek. Safek means doubt. Those who do not like the notion of a divine hand in human affairs will grasp at any straw to be able to deny that notion. 10 plagues can perhaps be explained away, but splitting the sea, that was one bridge too far. Do you see how the Jews wondering, Hayesh Hashem b'kirbenu emoyin, is there a divine presence among us or not, is exactly the same attitude that was Amalek's endeavor to smother the beginning of a nation that would defy the natural order of things. Those who do not like the notion of divine providence will go to any length to nip it in the bud, to cut it off in its youth. And that was Amalek's motivation, to come and fight the Jews who were not even a nation yet, who were only on their way to become a nation. In the entire history of the world, the Jewish people has always been an irritant for those who resent God's meddling in their business. So that is Amalek's reaction to Yam Suf. What does this have to do with Yithro? What did Amalek's attack add in Yithro's mind to his awareness of Kriyas Yam Suf? That knowing about Amalek made him act and come and join the Jewish people. Chazal tell us that Yithro was one of the inner circle of policy advisors to the Pharaoh when in Egypt the question arose, what shall we do about the Hebrews? We cannot longer ignore these strangers among us. They are a danger, they are a foreign element in our society, and we have to somehow get rid of them. And all sorts of ideas were tabled in the back rooms of Egyptian power. And Yithro participated in these deliberations, and it became clear to him that the consensus tended to a direction that spelled serious trouble for the Hebrews. There were plans for enslavement and forced birth control. All sorts of evil plans. We don't know what other plans the Egypts had in mind. Only Yithro knew because he was there. So Yithro didn't want to have anything to do with these things. He quit. He left Egypt, made his way to Midian. What could he have done? What should he have done? Protest? Try to undermine Pharaoh's plans? What can one man do? Not everyone is a Raoul Wallenberg or an Oskar Schindler. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, after he had killed one of the Egyptian guards in the Hebrew slave labor camp, and when he heard that Pharaoh got wind of that affair, then Moshe fled. He took a burning bush. Many years later, and a full week of arguing with Hashem to make him finally become the man of action who will take the Jewish slaves out of Egypt. But after Kriyas Yam Suf, when Hashem's intervention had become crystal clear for all to see, then even then Yithro could still persist in his policy of non-intervention. Sure, if somebody would have asked him, say his son-in-law would have sent a message to him and asked him for some favor in support of the Jewish cause against the Egyptian cause, Yithro would not have denied him that. He was not that kind of man, but get directly involved. Yithro could easily have said, I have enough problems of my own. Indeed, we're being told that Yithro had plenty of problems back home in Midian. He had become into conflict with other powers in Midian, and they had kind of ousted him from power. So why add to his problems by getting involved in the Jewish cause? But then Amalek came. When the pure evil of Amalek sprang into action, now Yithro was shaken out of his complacency. He realized that if Amalek could muster the strength to mount an army and fight against Hashem's hand in history, then he, Yithro, needed to join forces with Hashem's people and become one of them. Note that descendants of Yithro lived among Amalek in later periods in history. We find in Shmuel Aleph, in the first book of Samuel, when Shaul mounted a campaign against Amalek, he sent a message to the descendants of Yithro. The pasuk reads there, Vayomer Shaul el Hakeni Luchu sur rudu mitoch Amaleki pen ausivcho imo. And Shaul sent a message to the Keni, that is the name of these people who were related to Yithro. And he said, separate yourself from among the Amalekim, from among the Amalekites, because I will come and I will kill them there. And if I find you among them, maybe, God forbid, I would kill you with them. So separate yourself from them. And he gives as a reason, V'ato osiso chesed im kol b'nei Yisrael, ba'alosom mimitzrayim, v'yosa keini mitoch Amalek. Because said Shaul, we remember your attitude towards us, your friendly attitude towards us, and your helping hand that you gave us when we left Mitzrayim. And then these Canaan separated themselves from amongst Amalek and were saved. Today in Israel, we find the community of the Druze community who serve in the Israeli army. One of the Israeli top generals is a Druze. And we remember how a Druze policeman stood guard over the shul in Har Nof, which was attacked a few years ago, and where 4 Talmidei Chachamim were killed, and this Druze policeman also was killed when he stood guard over Jews. Interesting to note that in the Druze religion, their greatest prophet is not Moshe Rabbeinu, it's Yithro. They are followers of Yithro. In honor of this Yithro, and in honor of all those throughout history who acted like Yithro and joined Israel's journey with Hashem, the Parsha of Matan Torah is named after him. Because the Torah is for the entire world, for all those who seek Hashem. As it says in the Novi, in Sefer Yeshayahu, in the book of Isaiah, V'hoyo ba'achris hayomim nochon yiyeh har beis Hashem b'rosh ha'orim, v'niso mikvoaos. It will be in the last days that the mountain of the house of Hashem will be solidly established as the first of all mountains and higher than the hills. V'noharu elov kol hagayim, and all the peoples of the world will stream up to it. The word here is noharu, derived from the word nohar, which means a river, and it expresses that the action of coming to the Beis HaMikdash is not something that you would naturally expect, because water flows down from a high place to a low place. This is a stream upwards, completely against the normal course of events. But that will be the revolutionary impact of the Messianic age. V'noahu elov kol hagayim, then all the people will stream up to the Beis HaMikdash, to the temple. V'holchu amim rabim, and mighty people will go. V'amru, and they will say, Lechu v'na'alei el har Hashem el Beis Elokei Yaakov. They will say, come on, let's go up to the mountain of Hashem, to the house of the God of Yaakov. V'yareinu midrochov v'nelcho ba'archasov. And he, Hashem, will teach us of his ways, and we will go in its byways. Teach us of his ways means that Hashem will teach them the things that they need to know, and the Torah that he taught to Moshe Rabbeinu in 40 days and 40 nights that Moshe Rabbeinu spent up on Har Sinai. So what does it mean? Ki mitzion tetzeh Sarah udvar Hashem Yerushalayim. It is how the Torah will come to the rest of the world. They didn't listen when the Torah was given on Sinai, but in the future they will listen because of the Torah that will come forth from the Jewish people, who have been the guardians of the Sinaitic revelation all through history. It's important to remember when we take out the Sefer Torah from the Orna Kodesh, we say these words, which are actually a vision of how the Torah will conquer the entire world in the future, in the Messianic age. May it happen speedily in our days.